And one of the areas that I'm pretty pleased about is that we have, probably through our education system, ensured that a lot of young people who are going into business now actually understand the environment, they understand the community aspects, so they're actually hopefully coming out of eco-school programs and going in and demanding that their companies are far more conscious of what they do. But, there's always the but, there's still an awful lot that we have to do. On August the 21st this year, that was Earth Overshoot Day. I don't know how many of you heard this. This is the ecological accounting. Basically, they worked out that the world overshot its resources for this year on August the 21st. That means that we are now living on next year's resources, and they will obviously get shorter and shorter as we go along. So clearly, we are not able to live within our means. The three planet living that a lot of people are feeling that they personally live in, we have to get down to the one planet living. So that's the reflection of what happened in the past. Now, Felix in his presentation made reference to Agenda 21, and while the term Agenda 21 may have gone off the boil, it is still probably one of the best concepts, Chapter 28, particularly for those of us in Scotland and those of us in the public sector, is that the idea was that in Agenda 21, the people closest to making things happen are actually local government or the public sector. I mean, don't forget, in most other countries, the local government runs an awful lot of the services that we in the public sector in Scotland run. And this was, and still is, probably still the most important thing to think of. How can we influence business, companies, people, day-to-day lifestyles? Governments in Westminster or in Holyrood will be making policies and laws, but actually the implementation changes happen on the ground. And that was the whole concept behind Agenda 21. Every local authority in the UK was required to have a local Agenda 21. And a lot of those have been forgotten probably, or subsumed within community planning regimes, or generally need quite a lot of refreshment. So maybe again that's part of what we want to look forward to, saying that's what Scotland needs, is a refresh. I'm not worried about the terminology, that just gets people occupied about it. It's about what is it that actually we want to see happen on the ground. The stool that I've got there, the three-legged stool, is what many of you in sustainable development have used as a concept, is that it's the community, the economy and the environment of the three legs of the stool, and at the top we get sustainable development. Personally speaking, I have found that we never reach the top there. And this is somebody in a profession that was put together. I would say, as someone who's did economic development and sustainable development, I was grasping onto two of those legs. I never managed to even get to the third. Instead of jumping right to the top and working out how to do it, that was what happened. Is we and most of us probably, I would guess, find ourselves hanging onto one of those siloed legs. We're not actually reaching the top. So that's the whole concept going forward for, obviously, 2012, is that hopefully we'll be sitting at the top, working out how to do all the other bits on the legs. So, what is a green economy? Now, there is no one definition of what is a green economy, and I've seen various ideas of what it is. So what I'm going to use is the one that's been used by UNEP, the UN Environment Programme, and it's come out of a document they've produced, which Ruth put into on the website. There's actually a link, and you can get through to this. I'm afraid I did print it off, and I'm really sorry I did, because the writing was so small. It's clearly designed that you're only meant to read it online. This is quite a good, stimulating document. It's a preview report about what we're looking for in a green economy by the time we get to the level of UN discussions. And it's about a green economy within sustainable development. They're really, I think the concept is to try and hold on to, this is not just about renewables, just because that's the flavour of the month. And personally speaking, I think that's great. It is the flavour of the month, and clearly Leslie is as well. But it has to be within the concept of what is it we're trying to achieve, and why are we trying to go there. So if we assume that a green economy is to be defined as an economy that results in the improved human well-being and reduces the inequalities, sorry, it's fallen off the end there, over the long term, while not exposing future generations to significant environmental risks and ecological scarcities. sort of comes back to Agenda 21, back to the concept of stool, so it's all there. Now, jumping slightly back to when the previous discussions, the green economy, or the economy as the driver for sustainable development, this is fairly recent within sustainable development discussions, and certainly at Johannesburg it was assumed, well, the businesses can just meet and do their thing. No one was there to influence business or company at the time. This is going to be something that's new. And why is it new? Why did we ever think that a green economy could just happen because everyone wanted it? What we've become is very reliant on services, and as we all know, in the public sector, that's going to become, the services are going to diminish. So the green economy really, for all sorts of reasons, is going to be one of the clear and catalytic things that actually will make sustainable development happen. However, words have a however or a but, I'm afraid. Got to be really clear, the business community are a tough bunch of people. They go into business to make money. They don't go into business to save the environment and the world. Some of them maybe are going there and they're coming in from a different door, but the majority are really there to do it. So there's a lot of skepticism out there potentially. We're going to have to fight the greenwash, looks good on back to the business annual plan. There's the economic model itself. Now, I am not an economist, but from what I watch, it's going to be very hard to change. Even though we have a banking crisis, we have worldwide recession, it's the economic model hasn't changed radically enough to say that's sustainable development, and that's going to be one of the big areas to influence. It's very reliant on the leadership within a company, and companies are very hierarchical. Whoever is the president or the CEO is the person that's driving the theme in that company. And if you're not getting leadership on sustainable development in that company, that's going to be very difficult. So we've got to be realistic about that. But the other area would be is that, I think that a lot of people who started in the sustainable development profession, from whichever background you came from, were slightly naive that businesses would come along. I think there's going to have to be a lot more work to do a lot more influencing and a lot more work with companies basically to bring them forward. So what are the answers? That's the important point, isn't it? That's where we want to go to today. I'm going to use what the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, who actually came out of the Rio and Johannesburg, they actually were part of. So they are a grouping of 200 international companies who are basically a think tank and trying to stimulate that influencing on how to make a green economy. So the first thing they're talking about is the transition to a more inclusive, low-carbon, resource-efficient economy. This is where we go back to that point I made about corporate social responsibility, procurement, all have really important elements to ensure that that's actually happening. The next one is development will not be sustainable and poverty cannot be alleviated without business engagement. It's really, and I think this is one of, for me, and I was thinking about this for this morning, that's one of the hardest bits is to get. It's not just about doing a bit of nice work for a day out with the company. It's going to have to be something else. When I was working with my economic development team a few years ago, and they were fairly new to me and I was new to them, and I said, so what's the most satisfying thing you have in your entire career in economic development? And they all thought about it, and then they all came back with their own individual stories. And every single one of those was about working in a deprived community where they'd been able to go in, either provide new skills, save a post office in one person's case. So that actually is something that really stimulates quite a lot of people in economic development, but we don't tend to see it because it's the quiet stuff that happens underneath. So for me, there's about how do you, that is, and then you cannot have a sustainable world without alleviating poverty and people being involved and economically positive in the way that they engage in the world. Dynamic leadership, I mentioned that in terms of a CEO of a company. It's so critical, and I think in Scotland that's the thing that we really have an awful lot of desire for. We want leadership and we'd like to see it actually happening. And I'm sure many of you would have stories about where you see it or where you don't see it. And maybe today the thing is to bring out the good examples to show how that actually can be influenced somewhere else. And leading companies of tomorrow will be the leading companies of tomorrow will be those that anticipate the trends today and align profitable business ventures with the needs of society. And this is where I'm working on this year. I'm working. UK Trade and Investment is the UK's body that promotes export, basically, and they've sort of said, well, oil and gas can sort of look after itself. As the energy team I'm working for, saying, well, renewables will probably be the next thing for the low economy, for the low carbon economy. But they didn't really know where to start, because actually most of the renewable companies are actually more focused in the UK, because this is actually the best place at the moment to do offshore wind, to do marine wave and tidal, because actually we've got the financial support in the UK to do that. And it's interesting that you've got a lot of large companies who'd like to be seen to be doing the renewables, so they're looking at it, and they can actually probably fund quite a lot of the things that will actually need funding going forward. But actually probably the most entrepreneurial, innovative, best research and development is coming from, you know, the lady in her shed down the end of the garden, or the few people who've come out of university with some great idea. And they're the ones that we have to support, because they're the ones that are probably going to actually produce a green economy, not just because they will have a different business model. They're coming from a different background, potentially. All of that has to be done within the reality of what I said was the reality of the markets that we all live in. And then, you know, and I'm not sure how many of you are economists in the room, but we've got to be realistic. Leslie said it early, right up at the front, is that it's not about changing who we all are and what we do. It's about changing the way we operate within that environment. And a lot of businesses just are not willing to change, so it's going to be how we influence them. The other area that I just wanted to cover was that climate change probably is the dominant force that we're all working within, from whatever backgrounds we're in. But as Felix said, the biodiversity and the other issues that are coming up are actually equally as important for long-term sustainable development. So while I'm a huge advocate and I've worked a lot of my career in the climate change side, we've got to keep an eye on what the other issues worldwide are to ensure that the green economy is basically adjusting to what the needs of society will actually be going forward. I suppose a green economy, for me, finally, is about, well, in 50 years' time, and grandchildren are saying, well, did you do it or did you not do it? That's for them, is that if you've left us in something that's worth living in 50 years' time, then you probably made the right efforts. And that means that they have employment that they don't feel is destroying the world or is making community benefits. So overall, I hope that gives you an idea of the reflection from Johannesburg right through to sort of what the green economy agenda for going forward in 2012 will probably be. And I hope you have a good event today and stimulating discussions. Thank you.